My guest for today is Matt Swinney. How are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have you here. Matt, where are you originally from?
I'm originally from Minnesota. I'm Minnesota born and bred.
Is that where you are now?
Yeah, me and my wife and kids live in Minneapolis. Well,
Uh-huh.
Edina. Yeah, a little
How
suburb.
many kids do you have?
I have two kids. I have a
Two kids.
17-year-old and a 13-year-old.
Wow, teenagers,
Yeah,
that's fun.
it's a good times.
Yeah, especially during the pandemic when you're all in one house, right?
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
So, what did your mom and dad do for a living when you were growing up?
Both my parents were both hairstylists. So
Wow.
yeah, so they owned a hair salon for I think it was, let's see, it must be 38 years, I think it was.
So, were you in there sweeping and doing all the things kids have to do?
Yeah, yeah, it was
Yeah.
actually. I started
Well,
working in there at quite a young age.
were you always, did you always know you wanted to do hair?
No, no, that was actually not. I didn't want to do hair
Okay.
when I was in high school, but a few things. One thing led to another, and I found myself not doing anything. So I was like, well, my parents gave me a good life doing hair, so maybe I'll give it a shot and see how I feel about it. And ended up just really enjoying it right away when I got to school at the Aveda Institute.
Wow. So what types of things did you do for fun then when you were growing up?
I was in a lot of sports. I played a lot of sports, and I hung out with my friends. My friends always were having me like style their hair and stuff, like do their hair and all that jazz. So it was like it was weird. It was one of those things where it wasn't necessarily expected, but yeah, it was. I was always doing it.
Yeah. So how old were you when you knew that you wanted to do it for a living?
While I was 18.
Okay.
So, because I was right after high school, I hung around for like maybe 6 months doing things that I shouldn't do. That was my oldest son. Did you see that?
Hey.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh-huh. He's 6'6", 290 pounds. So
Oh goodness.
he's a big
Wow.
guy. Yeah.
Is he gonna
And
do hair
then
too?
no, he's
No.
going to the University of California, Berkeley on a football scholarship.
Oh, awesome. Good for him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no. And so I just was hanging around for 6 months and I wasn't really doing much, I wasn't productive. And so I was like, well, I need to do something that's productive at least, because I didn't really care for school.
Right. I
It
think a
wasn't my
lot of
jam.
us I think a lot of us are like that. I think
That was
I
my
think
life.
we love all the personalities coming through
I
there.
know. I know.
Um,
That's my family. Welcome to my family.
oh, that's great. So, what types of things inspire your work?
Wow, that's a good question. I spend a lot of time, I meditate a lot. I do spend a lot of time outside. My family, just like everyday life, everyday people. I like to observe things. I travel a lot for work, so I spend a lot of time observing in airports and, pre-pandemic, a lot of time in airports observing people and things. And I don't know. I think really, if you had to sum it in one word, it would just be life. Life
Yeah,
is what inspires my work.
I love that. How long do you think it took for you to start feeling successful?
Oh, that's such a broad term, isn't it,
I
really?
know.
I mean, successful. That's a good question. I guess for me, oh, that's a tough one. That's a really tough one because I like thinking to myself, I'm like, I mean, am I successful? I think success is just drawn from, in so many different avenues, right? So uh, I guess I felt successful when when we came out of this pandemic and my business was still standing. Like that. The salon I've had for 17 years is still standing. That was successful. I had a woman maybe like 4 years ago come up to me and she's like, I saw you when you were 23 years old and you told me I could make $100,000 and I didn't believe you and now I do. And
Um,
so like it's like I guess there's little moments of like that gives me like this feeling of success, but success isn't what drives me, so it's a little bit harder question for me to answer. I might have a better answer for you later, but
yeah.
I have to think about that one actually.
Yeah, it's sort of, a trick question on purpose,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
success is so different to everybody, and there's so many levels, and there's so many different things, you know, family success, and then financial success and personal success. I mean, there's just so many different levels of it. So I always like to ask that question because it is a trick question, one, but also two, because it does mean so many different things. And so to hear what success is to different people is cool, you know, just to see your vision and where you're coming from and stuff.
Yeah.
So the next question I have for you is sort of the opposite of that. A lot of the listeners, they want to know if you guys have fears. Like, are you afraid of things when you go up on stage, and how do you overcome those fears?
Yeah. So I don't really, you know, through a lot of my like daily life practices and my wellness practices that I do, like fear is not necessarily something that comes into my world that much. And I think because I really truly believe that, you know, if I give my all, then that's my best for that day, you know? And so I really don't, you know, fear isn't something that comes in. Sometimes I might get nervous, you know, or something like that a little bit. Depends. Could be maybe I'm doing something for the first time I haven't done yet on stage, or there's 5,000 people, you know, looking at me, like expecting me to awe them, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, that kind of thing. But fear is not one, you know, that necessarily comes. I think most people want to see you do well. That's why they're there to see you, you know. And if somebody, you know, if there's a heckler in the crowd, if there's a heckler in the class and whatever, I mean, that's really about them. That's not even about you. So fear is not something that I actually live with.
Yeah, I love that answer, because there are so many people who want to do stage work or want to do some of the things that you do, and that's the biggest thing holding them back, is they're just afraid of that one person, like you're saying, in the crowd or whatever it may be, or nerves, or I hear a lot of people say when they get up there, their hands start shaking and then the cameras are on them, and, you know, and I think it's important to just know that it happens to everybody, and that, like you're saying, you know, just most people do want to see you do well, really.
Oh yeah. I had a situation once I'll never forget. Like, I was on stage in Orlando. There was quite a few people, and I went to cut this girl's hair. Like, she had been colored, and I think she had like pretty bad hair in general to begin with, but then was colored again. And I went to use a razor. I was going to do a razor haircut, and literally her hair bent around the razor, you know, in front of a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so it's just a situation where honesty is the best policy. I'm like, well, that's not going to work. So I'm going to grab my scissors and we're going to do a different haircut, you know?
Yeah.
You know, if someone has a problem with somebody, you know, having a moment of, you know, something not working out right, then they're just not necessarily in touch with their humanity, right? Because not everything's going to go how you plan. So if you want to be an educator, then you have to be adaptable.
Yeah.
You know, on the go.
Yeah. That's great advice. That's very, very true advice for sure. So you are with Lonza. So how did you get with that company, and how did you start educating and doing things like that with them?
So it was a weird situation. I was at a show. I had just started working for a different manufacturer, and this guy who used to call on my parents' salon, he came up to me and he was like, you know, I just started working for this brand. We're looking for creatives. I think I was 24, you know, at the time, 23. And he's like, you mind if I give your info to the owner who just bought the company, he's not a hairstylist. He's a business guy. And I was like, yeah, for sure. You know, give him my name. Like, I'm young. You know, I just started with this brand, so I don't have any real like ties or loyalty at that point. You know, I haven't gotten deep enough. And yeah, we talked on the phone. He flew me out the next week, and yeah, and then ever since then I've been with them. I mean, it was a funny situation though, because when he said it was flying me out, he was like, so I'm gonna need you to bring your portfolio. And I was like, yeah, great, no problem. But I had no portfolio. There was no, you know, there was nothing. I mean, first of all, this was before phones, right? So like camera phones. So this must have been like 2003. So yeah, so I had nothing. So I called a bunch of my friends. Like, you know, I was a young stylist, so I had like cute hip clients. I had clients who were photographers, had clients who were videographers, and I basically created like a 56-second video montage of like who I am, you know, like, as a human. So I created an Instagram video before Instagram was around, right?
That's awesome.
That's what I brought as my portfolio. I was like, this is me. take it or leave it. And he was like, nobody's ever brought a video before. I mean, it's a different time, right? You know,
Right.
so, he hired me on the spot. So
Yeah, wow. And that's so true for even what you just said about becoming the educator and, you know, doing things on your feet. You got to be quick on your feet and pull something together and pull it off and being honest. And so that's awesome. I love that story.
Yeah.
So what was your first love? Like when you started doing hair, what did you connect to?
Well, when I first started doing hair, I actually loved doing men's hair. Like I competed in men's hair. And I really think it was just more so than the love for men's hair was the absolute, like, no clue how to style girls' hair.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like I had never done it before, as you can tell. You know, I wasn't doing much. You know, my hair's been like this for, you know, or some version of this for a long time. So yeah, I don't know. I think I just gravitated towards that because I had been doing it before in high school and stuff. So I really, really loved it. And then, you know, my parents owned a shampoo set Friday hair salon. If you don't know what that is, it's like all the old ladies come in on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, for a week. So that's what I was stuck doing, you know, when I got out of school for like 5 years. And I actually really started loving doing that. Like, I just felt like you learned how hair moves. You learned like if I do X, Y happens, all that kind of stuff. And not many people have that foundation anymore.
Yeah.
Especially young hairstylists don't have that foundation. And so it makes it, you know, yeah, I mean, that's what turned me on to like the next level, you know? So I think first it was men's, but then it was what I wasn't confident in, which is the styling that really got me going.
Yeah, that's actually, I started doing hair in 2005. And when I first started, I was in a salon. I think that was a little like outdated. So there was still that clientele there. And so my base was also that. And I didn't love it. I was like, I do not want to do these same ladies every week at the same time. Like it just became to the point where I was like, there's got to be something more. So for me personally, I connected more so with color when it came to doing hair. But yeah, I remember that. But, you know, there was a different time too, because then you were guaranteed a certain amount of money, you know, back then, where now, I mean, you are still the same, but it's not the same ladies every single week at the same exact time.
Yeah, exactly. It's every 8 weeks at the same exact time.
Right, exactly. You have more things to talk about after 8 weeks. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
You said grandchildren. So how has the pandemic and everything that's been going on, how has that affected you or your salon or where you're working? You guys have been doing pretty well then, you said earlier.
Yeah, I mean, like things are coming back, you know. I mean, I would say we're probably at about 90% as far as, you know, clients coming back. So I think that's a pretty good number. You know, the pandemic, I mean, for a week, it was really stressful. And then after a week, it's like, I have no control. Like anything negative that I'm going to say or feel is not going to change anything. So I'm going to accept the time for what it is and then try and figure out, you know, what I can do to grow as a human, you know, having some time off. I mean, this is the longest I've been in Minnesota since I was 19 years old. That was the longest I had off work since I was 14 years old. Yeah. You know, so, I mean, I had to figure out what to do with myself. And, you know, I've always been very nervous human about what am I going to do when I retire, because I work a lot. Am I going to be able to retire? Am I going to be able to, you know, or am I going to be one of those people that dies the day they retire because I have nothing to do? And I realized I can easily retire. So that was a positive, you know, of the pandemic. Like I found plenty to do and kept myself motivated and, you know, a little bit regimented and scheduled. And you know, so I don't know. I mean, I think it's hard, and I feel for salons that are really struggling and stylists, you know, renters that are really struggling, because not everyone's having that same experience about people coming back. And, you know, you've got salons still closed in California, and you know, I feel horrible for them, you know. And if I could do whatever I can do, if someone reaches out, of course I'm going to gladly help them. But the experience for me was not a bad experience.
Yeah. And I think I think you're a great example of mindset. You know, it's where you live in your mind and how you bring calmness, and like you're saying about negativity, all these things, it just doesn't serve you. It doesn't do anything for you. So what's the purpose of stressing yourself out? So I've noticed a lot of people in quarantine have gone one way or the other. They've found
Yeah.
new rituals, and they started really working on themselves, or they really like binged watched Netflix, you know.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
one or
Totally.
the other, yeah.
Totally.
And
Totally.
there's nothing wrong with either, you know.
No, yeah, hey, do you, you know, there's no judgment,
Exactly.
right? There's no judgment.
Exactly. So you said earlier that you do like meditation and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
what are some of the routines that you have like in your daily life?
Well, so I usually work out every morning. Something, you know, I got to do something to like activate the body. That to me is important. And then I for sure will do a minimum of three like working meditations throughout the day. It's like a Thai monks do this technique, like so, like sweeping the floor can be a meditation. You know, doing the dishes can be a meditation. And then typically probably six 5 to 6 days a week, I'll do like a longer sitting meditation. Um, you know, just depends on the day. Like I don't put stress on myself. Like, oh my God, you have to meditate for 30 minutes this time of day, every day. Like, I don't necessarily believe that. I think when it feels right is when you should, and for the length of time that feels good, that's what you should. You know, and I
Wow.
think that's people put too much pressure on them. Everything's pressure, pressure, pressure,
Yeah.
pressure on yourself, and I'm like, I'm not going to put that pressure on myself. Like, if it feels good, then I'm going to do it. And if it doesn't feel good or if it doesn't feel right that day, then I'm not going to do it, you know?
Yeah.
So that's kind of my practice, is to listen to my like low key vibrations that are going on in my body, right? The very quiet ones, not just the
Yeah.
ones that are like in your face.
Yeah, actually, I was just doing a podcast with Vivian McKinder, and we were talking about that exactly, about especially for artists. And it's the quiet moments that really speak to you, you know, when you get still and you're really listening to your artistry. And that's where like a lot of inspiration and your mind can really work on itself. And then it comes to life, you know. And so I agree with that totally. I know a lot of my listeners do as well. A lot of meditation, but not pressure. Just like you're saying, I felt for a while, even doing this podcast, I felt like, okay, I have to have this day or this many at this time. And then it just got to be like another chore. And I was like, I don't want that. Like, I love
Yeah.
talking to people. I love filling in the gaps for other hairdressers and inspiring and helping. And it was just, when it became a job, it wasn't fun for anybody, you know?
Yeah.
So I
100%.
see exactly what you mean with the pressure and all that. It makes total sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. I mean, basically, that's all the questions I have for you. You have been such a pleasure, and you've been such a joy, and you are totally a leader. I mean, you can tell
Oh,
just talking to you for 5 minutes, you can tell like your vibe is real chill, and so everything's really good. But
that's
the
very
last
kind
question
of
that
you.
I do have for you is, if somebody wanted to do what you do, what advice would you give them?
If somebody wanted to do what I do, what advice would I give them? I would tell them to take every opportunity they can. Like in the beginning of my career, there was plenty of times where I did things for free, where I flew myself places, where I just said yes. I mean, if you say no, you know, it might not always work out how you wanted to when you say yes, but you said yes and you learned, whether it's a negative or a positive. And so saying yes to every opportunity, I think, is a really good thing. Um, you know your value, but don't overextend your worth. I think that can be a big thing too, right? Like, I know my value and I know what I bring to the table, and those sort of things, but I never get caught up in, you know, awards that I've won thinking that I deserve this and I deserve that. No, that's not the case. Like, I know my value and I know what I bring, but the only thing that we truly deserve is, you know, happiness. Beyond that, the rest is just decisions and luck that happens along the way. And the last advice that I would probably say to somebody trying to be in my position would be, um, failure to prepare is preparing to fail. So you want to prepare for the moments that you have in life, and each day should be a preparation for the next day. Even though you don't know what's coming, it still should be a preparation. Whether it be a meditation, whether it be uh, reframe of the brain, whether it be a simple kind moment that you have with, you know, another person or another hairdresser or another, you know, human walking the street, you know. So yeah, every day should be a preparation for the next day.
Yeah. Wow, that was really beautiful. I appreciate your time so much. You've added so much value to this podcast, and people who are listening are going to fall in love with you as well. So just thank you so much for your time. I realize that time is so valuable. So thank you for sharing your time with me today.
It was an absolute pleasure, and thank you for having me on.
Thank you.